Think of a witty intro, dude.
I I got tattooed today.
Love, sex, relationships.
I love tattoos.
Love completely unrelated. Sorry, Misfits. We'll do better. We'll do better. Episode 56. Why love matters. Roll the credits. From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA. Two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your professional misfits. All the way from Sydney, Australia, I'm your host, Christopher Sellers.
From Portland, Oregon, I'm Broedy and C.
And we are your professional misfits, where we riff on the B-sides of life. And episode 56 and season 5 is brought to you by IGU, which is an old game with a new twist where modern innovation and nostalgia come together to bring you tag of the day, tag for today, Misfits. Check it out. 3 million views in the last month. Broedy, is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Dude.
3 million people reached and thousands and thousands and thousands of signups. So yeah, check it out, please. Check it out. You guys won't be disappointed.
They're an OG misfit, so you don't get much better rep than that. Here we are. All right, so episode 56. Broedy, how are you, first of all?
Good. I'm apprehensive about this episode.
Why?
Oh, I feel like I'm in such a weird place with the topic.
Why? Explain. I think it's a good place to start from because, I mean, it's the B-sides of life. So, and a lot of misfits probably feel the same way. So I want to get your understanding of the landscape.
I think I'm just nervous because I'm fleshing out internally that I don't actually have a solid idea of what just love is to me. I know it in context to situations. I know it in certain different behaviors. Like it's just very strange to sit with it for a second and be like, okay, what is that to me? And it was like 10 minutes before we sat here and sat to record. I was like, okay, I'm hyped. I'm ready. I'm good to go. Wait. Oh shit. I don't think I know what it means. I don't think I know what it means. So that's where I'm at, dude.
So you need a podcast episode.
Yeah. Yes, I do. Yes, 100%. I need this.
All right. So for some context, Misfits, here's what we're talking about. I watched a video recently on Big Think. You might have heard me talk about the channel a few times. There's some great content there with some great subject matter experts. It's really, really interesting stuff. And one of the videos that I came across was, it might even been titled like Why Love Matters, or it's specifically around sex, romance, and attachment, romantic attachment. So the three experts they have is Helen Fisher, Louise Perry, and Emily Nagoski. And they're talking about the different aspects of one in particular. Let me break it down. Like sex drive, romantic love, and feelings of attachment, and how they are three different brain systems, actually. And so she's making the case that, I think it's Emily, making the case of they're not phases that one goes through and just gets over and moves on. They're three different brain systems which can be tapped into and cultivated for the entirety of a relationship, for instance. So, and then there's basically it's a lot of discussions around sex, sexual attraction, what actually drives sexual attraction. There's a really, I think it's Louise who makes a really, really great point. Like genitals are great and genitals are fun, but sexual attraction is predominantly a mental exercise. Like you can't have sex without a brain. And so if we're talking about sexual connection, and those sort of feelings of excitement and all that stuff, the sex drive that you need to sort of commit to someone, and even like sexual enjoyment, like a lot of this is brain stuff, right? So and that's something that we often forget in the world of porn and OnlyFans, right? When that is shoved to the front, like actual genuine sexual attraction, what does that mean for each and every one of us. And it's really, really hard sometimes to peer behind everything that's put in front of us to actually find out without judgment, without shame, what it is that we need, and unless it's by pure trial and error through relationships, because that's the only other option. So this is the context of what's inspired this episode, Misfit. So that's what we're going to be vaguely getting into. As you know, we discuss everything and we solve nothing, but the conversation's more important. So this is probably why Brody's feeling a little apprehensive, because and probably you are too. I seem to be the weird kid in the room because I have no problem talking about any of this. And it's really, really interesting to me to because it's more like what makes people tick, why makes people tick, like completely free of judgment. And if that works for you, and whatever it is that you're into, cool, man. Cool. And I might learn something myself. But
so then let's start there. I think judgment is one of the biggest precursors as to what people allow to be their public acceptance of love, right?
Yes.
And I think, if I'm being honest, like that's a big thing for me that I've come to understand, that there's certain things and behaviors and traits that in my relationship and things that I've been through that, not damn, I better be careful here.
Hey Tiff, how you doing?
But what I'm trying to say is, like, I think outside in, there's a ton more influence than we even give credit for. And
I think we covered that a little bit in the last couple of episodes as well, or we get to it as well. But yeah, please continue.
And I kind of want to flesh that out for the Misfits, where it's like, number one, where does that come from? What a weird fucking place to have those insecurities or walls or whatever the fuck you want to call them.
Yeah.
What a weird place, right? Because just like you're talking about, on the inverse of it, it should be free. It should be freedom, and it should be accepting, and it should be exploratory. And like, those are the things that I imagine at the fundamental basis of that emotion of love. Those things pop up. And again, if you're jaded by this judgment that you're feeling, maybe not even coming from the partner, that's not even necessarily what I'm saying. Even parents, partners, parents, fucking siblings, whatever the fuck it might be. I think there's way more influence on that aspect of it than people even want to admit.
Yeah. And it can be really, really challenging, especially in the beginning, I suppose, when you don't know what you don't know. So like the world that you live in is your immediate influence, like your parents, your school, the town you grew up in. If you have a religious background, all of these things are normal, right? They're normalized, and so this is what's done. And so if you start to express, like, not even desire but curiosity to something outside of that, that without anyone saying anything, you can immediately feel like a lot of shame, or like you've done something wrong or bad or naughty. Right. Now these are, we're being super objective. These are normal feelings to have at first, right? And then if you want to step across that line and go, oh, actually, well, I want to know what latex feels like. I don't know.
Perfect example.
And it kind of feels soft and shiny, and like, that's kind of interesting. You know what I mean? But there's you do wrestle internally with, like, am I allowed to like this? To all of our queer misfits, I know you know exactly what it is I'm talking about. Like, you start having a curiosity or an interest in something that isn't quite hetero. And you're like, holy shit, what's wrong with me? Right.
And just like you're saying, what I want to highlight there is it's not even like an aggressive, outright kind of thing. It's almost passive as fuck, because again, it's the environment almost more than it is even the individuals within the environment. It's like that same damn study where they like take the monkeys and they like, have the banana at the top of the tree. They spray everyone down, and eventually the monkeys stop going up. right? And then
Interesting.
they send a new monkey in, and he'll try to go to the top of the tree. Those monkeys will beat the shit out of him before he gets anywhere near it. Within like 10 years, they've replaced all the monkeys, but the programming is so strong that those monkeys are still beating the shit out of each other for that banana sitting at the top of the thing, will not fucking budge because they think they're going to get sprayed with water. That's how that feels to me. That's how it feels to me. It's like there's something in my brain that somebody put there that's fucking spraying me every time I even want to explore even the innocent sides of it. Avoid the latex, right? Let's just talk about cuddling and shit. As a fucking man in this fucking society, to sit here and say, I fucking want the physical, I want to be wanted, and I want to be touched, and I want to be that shit doesn't sound right to a lot of people, you know, because they've been fed this fucking narrative that guys are supposed to be hard and they don't
stoic.
want their
You know, they
oh,
don't need
come
that.
on, dude. Like, fuck you. I bet you even the Stoics had a sweet spot. Like, you're not fucking. You couldn't convince me. You couldn't convince me. I don't think that you can't have both sides of the spectrum. So I really try to seek that and want that. But to speak about it out loud is shit. You know, like, I don't think I would go to some of my more masculine friends and say, fuck, dude, I'm really missing the cuddles right now. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I know exactly what
eat me
you're saying.
alive, dude.
Yeah. And so here we have this podcast, and here we have this conversation. But then going back to something that you tapped into right at the very beginning, which I think is probably more relevant for this episode, because we've covered previously, we talked about being a loner and why you should be misfits. And so this plays into a lot of that. Like, examine what you want on your own and without being swayed so much by social pressure. But if it's sex, love, romance, and attachment, these sort of things, like, ideally there's one person. You find one person that you can connect with, lock down with, and share all of those sides of yourself. Surely, right? So even in the world of public rejection, for want of a better word, there's still one person that you can find and connect, who understands, who gets it, and that you can openly talk without judgment with those sorts of things. And even then, I think that from my experience, that seems to be as rare.
Oh yeah. And what's funny about sitting here and talking about it now is it's strange too. And again, I love Tiff to death, but sometimes those relationships that you're talking about aren't even your partner. Like, for instance, you know, if I want to go talk spirituality or religion or things like that, I'm not gonna go talk to Tiff. That's just, we're not at that spot with that conversation, and that's just a reality of it. That's just me being dead fucking honest. I could sit and be enthralled in the conversation with my grandmother, and and feel that sense of what you're talking about, that security of being able to freely speak. You know, I don't have to worry about sounding stupid. I can ask any question that's coming into my mind. I can share any thought or experience I've had. And again, it's that freedom of judgment that I think allows that space. And it sucks too, because like I'm saying, I don't necessarily think Tiff is sitting here fucking judging me. I don't think any one of our partners is. I think it's just, once we have that kind of intimate level of a conversation, and it's threatened by someone close to you, and that might just be instinctual, that might be responsive, whatever the fuck it is, it's a much different conversation. It's not freeing anymore, it's convincing. You know, like, I have to convince this person that what I'm feeling and thinking is valid, and they are trying to do the same, so they're not hearing me. They're not, you know, like, and I know you're not hearing me because I'm doing the same thing right now. It's very difficult for me to hear your side because I know neither one of us is doing it. It's just it's my biggest question in that scenario is like, how do you even, number one, identify who those people are? Okay, those people that feel safe, that feel like love, and then number two, how do you manage the expectation of it when it doesn't always present that way. Because like I said, I don't think vice versa, where if I can come to Tiffany with my financial troubles or my emotional troubles or things like that, if I were to take those to my grandmother, it'd be a much different conversation that almost wouldn't be in a supportive way. That's, it's like, fuck, I don't want to have to pick and choose. It's like you're saying, shouldn't there just be a net? We should be this for every aspect of the person that we are talking about, but I know I'm not that safe space for Tiffany on certain things as well.
Right.
So.
No, look, I'd say the short answer is no. Like, you can't be all things to all people, and that's just a bit silly. But what I do think is, specifically for this topic and this conversation, is if there's one person you should be able to openly discuss emotional matters, your sexual interests, what you're attracted to, what you're not, what works for you, what doesn't, and also what works for you, said partner, like how, like, all that sort of stuff.
Being able to receive it,
yeah, give and receive, like, objectively, or at least to have the conversation, like, put it on the table and have the conversation to discuss it. If you can't have that with your partner, of all people in the world, there's sort of some questions that got to be asked there. Like, it reminds me of the bros sitting around a table, like, they can't have these conversations with their girlfriends, but then they'll go and, like, they'll have a few beers and they'll talk about this and that, and then fantasize about other women that doesn't do the shit that their wife doesn't do. Like, that's the most unhealthy, dysfunctional shit I've ever seen in my life. But okay, it's
perpetuated sadness is what that shit is.
Well, yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's a whole other thing, but it ties into what you were saying in the beginning, like how it seems to be rare and how much shame seems to be tied from that, not just for men, but also for girls. Because it's one thing for,
did I choose the right partner? Is this life what people perceive it as? Like, all these things that are a pressure,
or even being perceived as a sexual being. Like, there doesn't seem to be any sort of gray area. Like, you either are a virgin and must be a virgin for reasons, or you're on OnlyFans.
You're a harlot. You're a fucking harlot.
And there is no latitude
no
in the middle for, well,
that's everything right now, though.
Right.
That is everything.
Is it though? Because, like,
I feel like
historically this is still kind of
new.
It has been acceptable. It's been socially acceptable for men to openly be libertine, and I specifically use that word, right? Okay. To be libertine, to experiment, to enjoy that sexual hedonistic side of themselves. Women, not so much.
No, you're right. No, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, yeah, because they would have strung you up by your toes fucking 100 years ago if you were you're a woman, and especially expressing exploration.
Yeah.
Trying to, normalize that conversation for themselves. Yeah, that's not a war that I would want to be a part of, man.
But even to go to pull a random stat of how many women experience, like, a satisfying orgasm during sex, with their partner for whatever reason, and there's a multitude of reasons why, because, like, emotionally, psychologically, physically, and absolutely everybody is different.
Yep.
And then what I always wonder is, like, how it always struck me as really sad because none of my partners seem to have that particular problem, which was nice. But it makes me wonder then as well, like, how open are you about discussing, like, what it is that you need, what it is that you want, and exploring that and having that sort of trust and safety, because surely that would also go along with the satisfaction and enjoyment of a sexual relationship with your partner.
100%. And the thing that throws me off about this whole fucking thing is it is just being able to have an honest conversation, right? And it's almost like we were talking about in the beginning, to bring judgment back into this. I think females feel a lot of judgment in that scenario, where it's, if I do come to you and I tell you this is what I need, or I'm not being led to the place I want to be led to. I should feel safe enough and secure enough to say those things to you, right? But I don't think that's the standard judgment. The standard judgment is then you're fucking needy. You've got way too much going on. You're not fucking pleasable. All these fucking things.
No, well, also, yeah. Well, I was about to say, like, also, men apparently have an ego around that shit.
Oh, so, absolutely.
If all of a sudden, like, you've turned left and she really wants you to go right because that's what works for her, it's like, oh, babe, like, what? Like, it's just,
I'm gonna stay left.
I'm doing it wrong.
Like, just trust me. Just trust me. I'm
Don't give me directions. Amazing. Now, okay, so I'm gonna preface all of this with a little bit of a story that I might have shared here before, but I was very lucky that my first serious relationship, and my first sexual serious relationship, I was very, very lucky that we were compatible and the chemistry was there and everything else, and she was a little bit older. Of course I lied about being a virgin until probably about 6 months into the relationship, and she's like, "Oh my god, there's no way I'm your first." And I'm like, "Well, actually, and then blah blah blah."
I think that's every motherfucking dude. Every dude lied.
No dude is a virgin ever.
ever. Shut up.
Right, so there seems to be a
sixth grade, Tommy. Shut the fuck up, dude. Like, what the
right,
fuck?
and so that's a discussion in and of itself, like why we feel we have this need to prove something, in that respect. But I was very lucky in that this relationship was, I suppose, we were both sexually comfortable, and it was yes, it was curious, and yes, it was explorative, and yes, it was just all the good things that it should be for sort of like a first real relationship. So as a benchmark, as sort of like a learning experience, my connection to excuse me, women and relationships and love and intimacy and sex, it established that it could be this place where you could share things, and it was okay to talk about and sort of like joke about whenever you were together. It wasn't taboo and it wasn't forbidden. It was actually accepted. So that's something I'm really, really grateful for. There's been relationships since then that haven't been as honest, and then my last major relationship, which was about 5 years, like it was completely, everything was sort of on the table, which was great. So I come from this relationship history where it seems to have been more accepted, more open, and more warm in that sort of respect. Now, for everyone on Spotify, I can see Broedy kind of rolling his eyes in shock. But I have
like a fucking movie, dude.
Right. But I've also had guy friends and girlfriends as well, but guy friends where that hasn't always been the experience. Even one of the last girls that I dated, really, really lovely girl, very mature, very supportive and compassionate and loving in that way, but sexually very, very reserved. And it was this real tough dynamic to be in, because it was evident that she cared about me and she really, really liked me and wanted to spend a lot of time with me, and she was really, really interested in having sex and being there for that, but really emotionally and sexually reserved. And so then wanting to...
Weird combo.
it was. And so, when you first start dating for the first couple of weeks, and I think it lasted maybe 2 or 3 months, then let's talk about it. And so I would sort of ask questions or want to learn more or try and get an understanding. And it was really tough for her to sort of, I don't know, express or work through it or whatever it was. And in the end, it kind of ended because of this. Because you realize it wasn't just, let's just sit in bed. Like, that wasn't the issue, which, like, you understand that this is tied to some sort of an emotional block or a psychological block, and I want to be supportive, but if nothing moves, and I don't feel wanted,
then can't be the boy in the dam. I'm sorry.
Right. And so, do you want to discuss it, or do you want to? So it ended because of that. So it's a shame, but there was no real way around that. Lack of, I don't want to say like maturity in that sense, but it kind of was, but it just,
Yeah.
but it happens.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
let's go back to you, because I was describing my sort of relationship upbringing, and you were in shock.
I just don't. It just sounds lucky. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
that's fair. That is
it
fair.
and the reason I say that is because you know that kind of programming and conditional behavior that we talk about a lot. I think, and I don't want to say it's just a states thing. You know what I mean? And
No,
I
it's
don't
not.
want
It's not. It's not.
to, right. And I don't want to say you just got lucky. You know, like I think it's just the sliding scale, and where I'm at and grew up, like it was it was the extremes. Like it was the extremes. Like and it's funny too, because then like we're talking about where you almost have an established baseline for what that looks like for you because you got it in a healthy way. I'm almost disoriented by trying to, cycle through all these fucking thoughts and behaviors and things that I'm like, damn, before I would have thought that's love.
Yeah.
Now it's like, no way, dude. There's a
Yeah.
different way about it. And it's just, I think so many people go through that experience as opposed to, running into another that's at the same pace or place as you. And I'll say this is the other side of love. It's heartbreaking because it's not that you're individually attached to any one experience or person. It's just that obviously in those times, each one of us is in our own way trying to make that investment, right?
Yeah.
And when it's not translated that way, and like you were talking about with that last relationship where there's this block, you don't even just start to question the block or the obstacle, you start to question you. And
Yes.
and that's terrifying. That it literally makes me clam up. You know what I mean? Like
Okay, then is it though? Because you can. Okay, let's say. Like, yes, that was a thought that went through my head in this particular case, right? That's a
mhm.
thought that goes through my head, for a little bit, and really, I don't know. It's the insecurity flags itself, and I actually go, okay, cool. I'll grab that, and I'll pin that for later, because I don't know if that's actually the case, and I'm going to talk about it with you. So rather than take this and internalize it, oh shit, I can't do it right, and she's not into me or she's not attracted to me, even though she like shows up on my doorstep at 10 o'clock with baked goods and like all this sort of shit, so these two things aren't compatible. So there's, okay, I've got this little bit of an insecurity. Oh, hey, Jane, can we talk about the other night? Like, how was it for you and how was it for me? And like, okay, so it's like any relationship, you're getting to know someone slowly. So you're not going to.
Well, I wanted to ask you that. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, even that. So like one of the like common perceptions is love is slow, love is patient, love is kind, right?
yeah.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Okay, I I'm not so sure. You know what I mean? And almost like the open, free of judgment communication we're talking about, you almost need to introduce all of these things early before there's a preconceived ideal of that person in your mind, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then the judgment is placed because they broke that ideal by expressing something that does not match what you thought in your head. And if
Yeah.
you give yourself time with your own justifications of who somebody should be to you, you're fucking shooting yourself in the fucking foot. Like,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
No,
And I'm just
I
curious if
agree.
it's kind of the same because,
Well,
you know,
yeah. Please, yeah, go on. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
well, I was just going to say in terms of listening to your experience, right? Like not that 5 years is in insignificant amount of time, but that's a quick amount of time though too. Like 5 years
Yeah.
can pass quickly, you know what I
Mm-hmm,
mean?
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
that's kind of like again what I mean, like you didn't get stuck into a 10-15 year relationship, and then we came to these realizations. It was like, no, we shot the shit real fucking quick, real fast, and real honest. And to me, that seems like the most potent recipe, because again, almost like the podcast, right? Like, where if I show up authentically and our viewers get that taste of me, and they know me right off the rip, they're going to make the decision whether they're going to listen longer or they're going to leave. Right. And you almost, I think we almost unintentionally obscure that for the people that we're interested in, and or for ourselves to that person.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
what the fuck? Why though?
No, okay, well, for all the reasons that you explained earlier, for judgment, for fear of rejection, for like a million different things. And some of it is justified, and some of it isn't. I mean, obviously you can't pull back the curtain completely and just go like, here's all the trauma, like day one. You know, here's my upbringing, here's my, you know, fucking hopes and dreams and failures and ambitions and all this sort of shit. Terrifying, overwhelming,
let's
unhinged,
skip the favorite
unhealthy,
colors.
like all that sort of shit, right? But okay, there's a real simple example, and I don't think it's this controversial, but if you look at the whole world of kink and BDSM, which everyone knows exists and is can be a running joke to some, but like fuck whatever. The cool thing about kinksters, right, is they draw a real fine line between here's personal, professional, this is my life and whatever else. Bam. Behind those doors, if you're interested,
right,
here's all the things that I'm into. Right? So there's something, I'll say this, there's something I've always respected and admired about the kink community, is that in general, for this conversation, they do the work, they do the inventory, they figure out like what I'm into, what I'm not, why, like, does this make me a bad person? Am I unhinged? Or like, no, like, safe, sane, and consensual is the three rules, three fundamental rules. Within those parameters, do whatever you want. Latex, paddling, all this sort of stuff. So that in sort of internal work.
I think you're giving the Misfits a particular idea about what's behind Chris's closed doors.
Well, fuck it. I mean, okay, cool. But then the same rules apply. I
agree. Yeah.
That podcast is this, but then behind closed doors, it's X, Y, and Z, right?
Yep.
And if that
then it takes a level of bravery, then, in my personal opinion, because number one, boundaries require bravery. That's a fucking fact.
That's a slogan right there.
Misfits. It is real as fuck. And then number two, I think, just like you're talking about, there's some vulnerability behind those doors.
Right.
That takes bravery too. To not only feel brave about it, but feel secure. This is what I like the way that you said that. They do the inventory. This is what I like, motherfucker. You don't have to like it too. I'm not saying that to you. In fact, I didn't advertise this shit at all. You asked me. So, and I feel like that should be the narrative of the conversation we're talking about. Like, for regardless, whether it's kink, whether it's love, whether it's ambition, whatever the fuck it is, I should have the safety to say these things to you, and you acknowledge the bravery that takes, whether you agree with it or not.
I think you are 1,000% right. So it's about doing that sort of self-reflection and inventory. Now the catch, and this is where the sort of catch is in this dynamic, is that one, no one's going to give you the safety and security. No one's going to figure out for you what you're into. So this is like, there's an element of work that you need to do for yourself for your own reasons. Second, like, unfortunately, is then to share that with somebody else. Right? And then finding that altruistic objective, like middle ground of like, if we're in a relationship together, or if this is going to be our partnership or whatever it is, then can we talk about these things?
I wonder if, cycling back to the bros then around the table, I wonder if in this is just in theory and kind of context of the situation, I wonder if that's kind of in layman's terms, people's way to practice, right? Like, because again, I think if you got enough shit
That's
from the
fair.
bro, you know what I'm saying? Like, because I
That's
think if
fair.
you got enough
That's
shit
fair.
from the bros and the conversation was triggered, maybe not in the healthiest of ways, because I personally think, Misfits, with your romantic relationships, that's you and your partner, nobody else. I think in my own experience,
That's
bringing
Brody's
in
boundary.
that this is our relationship, point blank, period. And it's not me, you, and your mom. It's not me and you and your dad. It's not our siblings aren't involved. We're not sharing a
Yeah.
fucking bed with any of these people. So this that's kind of, my thing. But at the same time, like I was saying, if I didn't feel like I had a threshold that I would reach, or, have these conversations, that is a fucking, I mean, that's a contained space. I mean, you know what I mean? For all
I,
intents and purposes, the boys aren't going to rat you out to your girl. They aren't going to go, hey.
Okay, you raise a good point. Like if you feel safe with the bros, if you feel safe like down in the shed, and if you feel that you're able to be vulnerable in these spaces and talk about these things, I suppose that's not a bad thing. Here's another example for you as well. Like I have a few friends who were female sex workers, right? And
Okay.
the really, really, really interesting thing
Okay,
is
context though. Are we talking are we talking OnlyFans? Are we talking
no, like
escorts?
actual
Or
like physical escorts.
okay.
So the really interesting thing is, like most of the clients that they meet, they just want someone to talk to. Like the money is one thing, and like the sex is sort of the act, but
I
after
feel
it's
like a
done,
dick about being
like
so
no, yeah,
surprised about that.
well, right, but leading up to it, and then definitely after the fact, it's just these guys seem to want like a vulnerable, safe space to go. Oh, my life. Oh, like my wife doesn't understand, or X, Y, and Z. So what again, like what struck me as really, really sad about a lot of those sort of circumstances is it wasn't the scintillating, like, I'll do all the things your wife won't do. Like the things apparently his wife won't do is listen to them and understand them. Now that's compound. That's a guy either feeling like ashamed or like can't, or feel like he can't express to
Right,
his
you
wife.
haven't communicated.
Like,
Right.
you're finding an excuse. Like a sex worker is an excuse for your relationship.
Yep.
Right.
Well, yeah, and it's and I want to state this kind of redundantly through this episode, just as like a piece of awareness for the Misfits. You said it really well earlier. I think too, contextually, when you get in that situation, a red flag has got to be raised.
Well, it's a boiling frog, isn't it?
Bro, if I gotta pay somebody to fuck me and listen to me, I know that my relationship at home is fucked up.
I agree, but then again, like in context, when you look at some of these guys, like might have multiple businesses, might have kids, might have the mortgage and everything else, and so they sort of look at it as a place like if I'm unhappy, I've also got too much to lose. So like,
oh,
what
fucking
is
piss off.
No, bro, I don't.
Fucking choice.
I'm not justifying it.
I know you're not.
Without judgment.
Damn it.
But again, it comes right down to the root of like, why can't we talk about these things?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
The men as much as the women, and it's not anyone's responsibility, but it's an individual's responsibility, I think. And it's and again,
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit of a funny thing because you don't. It's like being at the buffet. You don't really know what you're into until you taste and try a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Unless you're going to be happy with like vanilla ice cream for the rest of your life.
Well, see, and that's that's why I liked the story of your kind of like upbringing and
My origin story,
right, in romance, and not to say it was slow, but it was paced. You know what I mean? Like, and like that's the thing that I think I was trying to touch on a little bit earlier too. It's not only necessarily like here. It's the judgment of who and what and when and why kind of thing. God damn. It's also like the judgment of when. Like for a fucking ton of people, I
Ah.
feel like in the States, you are just, and especially women, I'll say this, I feel like a lot of the women that I grew up around were constantly talked about, like, when are you getting married? Do you plan on getting married? You're going to have kids? You're going to do that? And that is just so subtly redundantized in their fucking brain that that's the only thing playing. You know, it's like, wait, am I going to have kids? Am I going to get married? And just like you're talking about with the vanilla, the judgment and the fear of shame is so much more powerful than the urge to explore and make the correct decision. Because I mean, I'll say this too. I mean, divorce has never been fucking higher. And
Right.
granted, we're all talking about it and we're
Yep.
recording it, so like it's a
And
blasted
it's
problem.
yeah, and it's not necessarily new. It's been
And
on
this
the
is what I try to tell people: divorce just didn't look the fucking same. People, you
yeah.
just fucking left like that. That was divorce back in the day. If anybody was wondering, you just left.
Oh, this is a true story as well. My in April of this year, Glenn was telling me the story of like one of his estranged sort of uncles who, way back in like maybe it must have been the 40s and 50s, basically slept on the patio for the last 25 years of his life because his wife wouldn't have him in the same bed and no, he couldn't sleep in the spare room. Legit.
I'm gone.
Right.
Oh, dude,
Right.
what?
So the most
We
unhappiest,
don't love each other. We don't love each other.
but you can't get divorced, and you're here now. So
Oh, God.
yeah, but you know, so that's the other half to all of this. That's right. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about
Love.
romance and attraction, all those sort of things. We hope he's making sense, Misfits. What was you had questions, B? What was the other? Have you answered them, or they're more on your list?
I mean, the one question that kind of hasn't been talked about is like, for us personally, like I said, when I sat down and couldn't answer it, what does that mean to you? What does love mean to you? And now I kind of want to refine this a little bit. And I don't necessarily just mean in the relationship context. I mean that exact feeling that we've kind of like inadvertently highlighted this entire episode, that safety, that freedom, that security, that thing. What defines that for you? Because again, like we've talked about a little bit in the episode, attraction's a part of that. Fucking ambition plays into it. You know, like I don't think I could ever love someone that was not ambitious in any part of their life. That shit would fuck me up. And if I loved every other piece of you, I still think that would be an issue. So
Yeah,
how
right.
can I say, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
I love you. You know, I
But
love.
don't be a loser.
Right, right. Well, that's what I'm saying. And it, and it's so funny too, because that question presents to me too, back what we were talking about with judgment is like,
Yep.
that's a scary fucking thing to ask somebody, right? Because again, I have to tell you, I have to tell you what that fucking means for me. And shit, that might not be the same for somebody down the road or somebody sitting right next to me. That's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
freaky. You know what I mean? Like,
Why
here's
is
my
it? Okay.
name
Why is it
tag.
scary? Why is it scary?
Because look, I think now further through the episode, that's kind of the thing is I don't want the idea or my idea of what that means to me to be rejected. That
Right.
scares the fuck out of me. It scares the fuck out of me because then it's like on the most intimate level, like we were talking about. Wait, dude, do I have this shit way out of whack? Like, am I fucked up? Am I wrong? Is my idea, is my expectation of it wrong? Like, and then again, this isn't just one of those things where you're like, oh, do I fucking tie my shoes funny? This is this shit that fundamentally pieces together who you are
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
receive the
Yeah.
world, you know? So, what is it to you?
Um. I don't. I'm not gonna cheat. My first impression was, look, I'm not quite sure because if I knew, I'd have it, and
Mm.
and I don't. And even back when I thought I was clear on who and what I was attracted to, I ended up dating someone who wasn't that at all in the slightest. And it was, you know, like the healthiest relationship we had for 5 years. There's part of me that's sort of, I won't say given up, but let go of those sort of expectations, because these are things that I can't control. Like who another person is, what they're into, what they do, and all this sort of shit. It's not within my control. It's not my right to control it. If I come across it and I'm attracted to it, then great. I have a rough idea of what I'm attracted to. It's a bit of a running joke, but similar to you, I appreciate ambition, and I appreciate intelligence, and obviously communication's a big thing for me. So being able to articulate all the things and everything that run through my crazy little brain and have them heard and understood and accepted would be of great comfort for me, because I can't say I've really had a lot of that in my life. Shout out to Charms, because I know she's listening, because she's one of the few female friends I have that does, just openly. And at times when we sit down for breakfast and I'm like, I don't know, and kind of censor half a thing, she's like, no, like no judgment, no sorries, what's going on, and just can share all the things. And thankfully, likewise with her, like she's going through a lot at the moment with her family and sort of career and stuff like that. And she's okay being vulnerable as well, without any sort of expectation, because she's married with a kid and she's very, very happy, you know? So on an altruistic, platonic level, she could share that. But I know enough of what I'm attracted to, or what I would consider, I know enough of what I'm attracted to recognize that I don't have it and it's not immediately around me. Right. And so I'm that annoying single bro who's like, everyone's boring. Everyone's basic. Everyone's boring, you know. So I guess I just have to be patient, or, you know, or leave the country. I mean, I'm hoping to leave the country. So
yeah. Shit. Yeah. Interesting.
But I know that kind of probably doesn't answer your question, like what it is. It's like, well, I guess I don't know until I have it, and that's probably some of the caps. Like I know how I want to be treated. Like I know how I want to feel.
I think it's a safe answer for a lot of people. I think. I'm
old enough and experienced enough to know what I should not have, and that's right. And I've been very good lately, because those little temptations pop up every now and then. And I'm like, no. Yep. No. Yep. Like we're past this now, because I want the real thing. Like you sort of get to a building stage of who I want. Well, I guess that's how I look at it. Like I've clearly figured out what path I'm on and whom I want to be and where I want to go and what I want to do. So if someone shares those sort of values and aligns with this vision, like not my vision, but like a vision of their own, great.
Yeah.
You know, because I've always, I wrote something when I was 19, 20. I remember this specifically. In a journal, I said, I want a mentor, a muse, and an equal. And I've never had it.
Love that.
They put that on a t-shirt.
Yes. We've been dropping fucking bombs this episode.
Right? And I've never had it. And so that's always sort of been the ideal. And it taps into something that you said a little bit earlier. And I am envious of people that have had the lightning bolt moment at first sight and gone, you're the one. You know, and I'm like, fuck, I want that. And not yet.
It's weird. I've told people about it. I mean, even with Tiffany, that was kind of the thing. I saw her on MySpace. And threw a slick line about the sports team that she was wearing in her shit. And I mean, literally from the second I saw the profile picture to present day, you know what I mean? I was like, you fucking bro, come on. You got to be over here with me.
You swiped right. You slid in those DMs.
Yeah. And I want to say this. I think for me, now having this episode and, you know, having to think on it, I think, and it's so funny too, no judgment. I don't care. I don't care even if people are judging me. The idea of love to me is support. Is support. And God, I'm gonna sound like I have way too high expectations, but almost on the unconditional level, right? Where it's like a lot of us, and I think it's kind of what we're talking about with this vulnerability, with this ability to communicate, these kind of things. It stems from I support who you are, how you feel, and who you want to be, and that to me, that shit's love. That shit's love, and it takes a certain forethought to be that way too, because I think we all know we change on a day-to-day fucking basis. So to know that you love someone now, you might have to very clearly think about who you're loving in the future, right? Because it might not even be the same damn person. They might have the same face. They might not be the same person. And it's just that support of, I don't care what your character development looks like. I'm here for it. Because like you were talking about, you align so well with me that I don't necessarily want to, and like we were talking about a little bit earlier, and what's interesting in speaking about it now is I don't think it would be a fear of losing that. It would be an acknowledgement of how good that is, right? It's not so much I need you and I'm fearful of losing you. It's that, damn, I see you, and I see what we have and that kind of thing. It's like we're talking about. It's rare, Misfits. It's rare. I think even the people that you see that have 25, 50-year relationships, that shit was not perfect. I guarantee at one point in time they wanted to fucking kill each other and or leave or both. And you know what I mean?
Probably for good reason. Yeah.
Right. Justifiably so. And that's a tough gig to make that commitment to say, again, I'm here. Support. That's what I am. And I love you. And yeah, that's it for me, boiled down.
I do have a question, just a little bit spicy towards the end, a little spicy kick. Is like on a scale of 1 to 10, like 10 being the most important, 1 being the least important, where is sex, like sexual attraction and sex, on your tier list of 1 to 10?
If you would have asked me even like fucking
Sorry.
if you would have asked me 5 years ago, it would have been number 1, 2, or 3.
Wow.
It because that physical attraction in what I perceived as love was so fundamental to expressing it. But now as I've gotten older, I'm like, holy shit, dude, that's scratching the surface, baby. We can make each other feel. You know what I mean? Like, we can make each other feel, but make me feel believed in. Fucking make me feel like you know me.
Hang on, like I'm confused now. So 1, 2, or 3, like the least important or the most important?
Most important. And now I'd
Right.
say,
No. Okay, so you're like 8, 9, or 10. You mean?
yeah,
Because like
now,
10
yeah,
most important, right? But
okay,
now
yeah,
it's different.
yeah.
Okay,
Now,
that makes more sense.
it's changed, and it's
Right.
not to say I don't enjoy it. It's not to say that
Yeah.
I wouldn't seek it every day. It's just again, in my experience, the expression of love does not have to be so simplified to that. And I think a lot of what we do is simplify it to that. If we're not fucking,
Yes.
she don't love me.
Yeah.
That's stupid as fuck, bro.
It's a transactional thing. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's stupid as fuck. Did you ask her how she's doing in her head recently? You know what I mean? Like, Jesus, bro. Okay, if it's that simple. But yeah, no. I feel fucking way better having had this conversation.
See? It's not that scary.
No, this was good.
Like,
Misfits, do it. Do
it. Right.
Fuck you, please.
But similarly, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's I'd be lying if I say it would have been a 9. But again, like for all the reasons that you just explained, like, but not it's not the only 9. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, let me show you like all
Okay.
the other nines that there can be. Like, let me show you how I can care. But like this, we're not going to strike this off the list, babe.
Yep.
Like this is
Okay.
staying
That's
away.
fair. That's fair. That's fair.
2 years, 5 years, 10
Don't
years.
get me wrong, Misfits. Please don't say I'm striking mine off because I don't. God forbid. I don't.
The point is, like, it's not to the exclusion of all else, and
Right.
nor is it a substitute
No.
for everything else.
No.
right?
No. And that's a slippery slope. That's a slippery slope. Because then, like we were talking about, I think lines just get blurred and you can't tell where you stand. You know, that shit's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you hate sex in your relationship and you wonder why.
Yep.
And that's more common than you think.
Yep.
Nice. All right. Episode 56. We're done, Misfits. So, how was it? Are you uncomfortable? Or are you
Actually,
a little bit relieved like Broedy?
I'm feeling like they're going to be as relieved as I am.
Good. I'm glad.
This is a good one.
Again, solve nothing. Discuss everything. That's the most important. Let us know what you thought in the comments. That wraps up episode 56. Broedy, episode 57 coming up next week. Do you know what's coming up next week?
Yeah, it's the Culture War episode. And the only reason that I know that, Misfits, is because when I saw it on the run sheet, I thought to myself, I need to ask Chris what this means to him. And I never did. So
so we're going to do it live.
It's been sitting here. Yeah, tell me. What is your plan for this episode?
It's going to be spicy, Misfits. We're going to take, probably Broedy and I, we're going to take an issue in current society or politics or whatever and say, if you could solve one thing of the universe right now, what would it be? Like, what's one issue that's plaguing the world and people and everything else? And if you could solve it, how would you solve it and why? So it may be controversial. I don't know. We've got a week to think about it. Brody's nodding his head with a sort of sinister look. Do you have any ideas? Anything that's immediately popped to mind, or you want to save it?
I just am laughing because I know yours is going to be fucking throw all the social media.
Probably burn all the social media. Yeah, it's too easy. I need to think of something a bit more practical. But that's what we're going to be discussing about, like whatever that happens to be. So that'll be episode 57, Misfits. As always, you can find us at promisfitspodcast.com. You can find all of our socials. You can find our Patreon where you can support us. You can buy us a coffee and buy Broedy glasses because he always needs new glasses. You can support IGU in the link. Again, shout out for supporting season 5. Thanks you so much. I think that wraps it up. Broedy, did I miss anything?
No, that was perfect.
Cool. Love it. In the meantime, Misfits, you stay classy. I've been Chris.
I've been Broedy.
And again, you stay classy. And we'll see you on the next one.